All right, we're back at the studio with updates and new gear. That's basically what this roundup is going to be. I'm going to try to alternate these now from like out on the trail or on the ride on the bike videos, and then also like in the studio here, update gear process videos. So anyway, today is updating gear, and I got a couple new things that have come in, and then a couple pretty exciting updates. So let's get straight into it. Chris King, maker of my favorite headsets in the entire world, stopped making some number of years ago threaded headsets entirely. Which, I mean, I understand, but it's still sort of a bummer because there's an awful lot of vintage bikes out there that that are threaded, and particularly like 1-inch threaded headsets. I could see if you could drop 1.125, but like 1-inch threaded, I don't know. Anyway, it made me sad. As a result, it's gotten very, very, very difficult to get 1-inch threaded King headsets on the secondary market. A lot of people looking for them, and not a lot of them to go around. It's not like they wear out very often. So you're sort of waiting for someone to part out a frame for the most part, or dig through their parts bin and notice that they've got one kicking around. Anyway, I have 1.5 now. So previously, I had these guys right here come in. This is a 1-inch King set of cups. We have both of them here. They're in reasonably good, I think pretty excellent condition. There's a minor wear mark on this right here. But otherwise, these suckers, besides the bearing repack, are probably just about cherry. Really, really, really nice. But what I don't have for these, you could still get the base plate that goes on your fork crown. So that part is obtainable. You can call up King and order them, like 20-something bucks, no big deal. What you can't get is the top assembly. I think you can get a threadless 1-inch one, but I don't know who the heck has threadless 1-inch forks. So I couldn't get the top part of this, and I've been looking, and I will continue looking for another top assembly for this one way or the other, but I don't got one. So I managed to find that. Ooh, look at this. So that's a base plate. That is the what gets pressed onto your fork crown, right? That is a lower race, and I am. You can see there's significantly more wear on the internals of this one right here, but none of that shows, so I don't really care that much. But this is like the Sotto Voce, maybe? It's like a black on black logo, which, I mean, like under absolutely ideal circumstances, if King was still manufacturing these new and I was willing to throw the money at it, that's exactly the color combo I would have gone for the bike that this is going to go on. So that was exciting. So base plate, a pair of cups. I know that these have the logos etched into them, yeah? In case you don't know, if you look around on the super cool bike sites, you'll find that there's a certain cadre of people that like to press these in upside down. That is to say, this is clearly meant to be a top cup, and they'll put it in the bottom of the frame to get the King upside down. And it's actually purely an aesthetic choice. These two cups, minus the etching, are absolutely identical, completely interchangeable. So that's no big deal. Anyway, this is a 1-inch threaded top assembly, and this one right here is called a grip nut assembly, which is actually pretty rad if you've never seen one. So basically, this bottom guy down here tensions your bearing. Okay, so this lower part with this cap on top of it, that tensions your bearing. So this part screws on, and then in a normal threaded headset, this part screws on, and then this part threads onto the fork. And you tighten this one down and back this one back off into it so that they're god-awful tight, and then pray that your headset never comes loose because they're a giant pain to adjust. They will almost certainly come out of adjustment while you are doing that tightening act. This doesn't work that way. So this guy, these are one piece. If you just hold it, these don't like come apart. So what you've got inside is silver. See that threading in there? And what happens is, if I can't unscrew this one-handed, but basically this guy right here has this silver piece, threaded piece inside, bound to it. Yeah? And then this guy threads into the black part. And when it does that, if you look really carefully at that silver insert that's threaded, let's see if I can find it for you. See that gap right there? So that's actually a wedge. And this part, when it tightens down, pinches that wedge tight. So what's really cool is you set the tension of the bearing with this lower part, right? And then you tighten down this, but when you do that, it locks the threads onto the fork, and your headset is infinitely less likely to come out of adjustment in the first place. It's a beautiful, elegant, lovely thing. But there's a downside. In a conventional threaded headset, when you thread on that top bearing preload, you can put spacers on, and then to get up to the top of your fork, and then you put on your top lock nut, and that's your whole thing. On this one, the fork has to be just the right height, so I may end up having to cut my fork down a little bit to accommodate this. Okay, that's first downside. Second downside is you cannot, because you can't put spacers between the bearing preload and the lock nut. On my bike right now, there's a front brake cable hanger that's inserted there. That was very typical of the time. And mine's in lieu of a spacer in the headset. And so that setup is not going to work anymore, which means I need to find a new front brake cable hanger before I do this, or else I won't have a front brake. And I'm going to have to find one that clamps to the stem quill, which exists, but I'm trying, you know how it is. Like, trying to find the right one and trying to find the one that's both like aesthetically pleasing and financially responsible and obtainable and like on and on and on and on. So I'm trying to find one that doesn't look terrible and doesn't cost a bloody fortune. And we'll go from there. But that's doable. So I am a cable stop away from being able to knock an old headset out, press this also old but much nicer headset in, and have the steering on my bike finally work properly. As it is on my gravel bike, I can't ride no-handed because the headset's got such a dent in the bearing races that it auto centers. Like, it pulls the handlebars back to the center, and then you can't ride no-handed because to ride no-handed you actually need really free steering, or relatively free steering, to be able to sort of correct the bike down the road. And because my stem and my fork snap back to center, you can't do that. It's super annoying and inconvenient. Anyway, so that came. I'd been waiting for it forever, so that was pretty cool. Second thing that came is a new wind jacket. It's that time of year around here where like it's generally pretty warm during the day, right? Like, we're probably looking at like, I don't know, like an 80-degree high or something like that today, which is really conceivably pretty nice. But the downside is the mornings can still be pretty chilly. Like, you can pretty easily be down to like the upper 50s in the morning, and so it can be nice to have a lightweight wind jacket that you can put on, and then as you warm up, as the ride goes on, you can whip it off, roll it up, jam it in your jersey pocket, and carry on with your thing. It's a very comfortable, convenient thing, and I haven't really had a proper one in a really long time, but I got one. Waited months for it. This is from Dispatch Cycling, and they did this amazing like bone camo in like 3 colors on it. Love it. Look at that. Really, really nice. And then they did this really nice badge across the back. Let's see if I can get that laid out for you there. Right? That's pretty sweet. And then there's a hit on the front as well. So the same sort of like layout, but without the camo across the zipper. A little bit more subtle on the front. I like that. I'm totally into this thing. It's super comfortable. I bought, because I'm a big boy, as we've discussed, I bought the XL of it, and it's still more trim in the body than I would hope. I'm sort of flabbergasted all the way. I mean, this never used to bother me because I used to be really, really skinny. About how thin bike clothing is cut, and like the expectation that every 6'1" person wearing the clothing is simultaneously going to weigh 160 pounds. And I don't anymore, and I think a lot of people don't. And I'm just sort of, I don't know, man. I'm not like, I guess I wish there was more accessible sizing in the bike world. We're not all 130-pound climber wannabes. You know what I'm saying? Some of us are sprinters. That just means fat. All right, anyway, so those two pieces of gear came in. Super exciting about both of those, actually. And then the third thing is the update, right? So the update is my mountain bike is in dire need of love. Yeah, if you've watched before, you know I have a 26-inch wheeled mountain bike that I've been riding for the last, probably like 4 years, 3 years, something like that. When I moved to this location, I got access to good trails again, like super local and close, and so I started riding a lot again. And I originally started riding one of my old mountain bikes, and I snapped the frame, so fairly typical for me. So I bought a new frame, but at the time, right, like I was hesitant in that I hadn't been riding for a long time because of kids and work and life and all of that. And in getting back to it, I wasn't sure how back to it I'd be able to get, right? Like I didn't want to throw down and get, a whole new rig only to ride, once a month. That didn't make any sense to me. And I already had an existing set of 26-inch wheeled stuff. I had 26-inch wheeled forks, 26-inch wheels, tires, I had a whole bunch of stuff. So I opted at that time to find a frame that was much more recent than the one that I had broken, but that was still 1.1/8 straight steer and 26-inch wheel specific. So I found one. It was an Evil Sovereign, which they were not actually still making, but they had one or two literally in the warehouse, and so they sold one to me for pretty inexpensive, I should add. And I built that up with all my existing parts and have been riding it, and it's been lovely, and it's gone through some transformations of its own, right? Like it got a new drivetrain a little while ago, and it's gotten handlebars, and it's gotten a bunch of stuff. It got a dropper. Can you imagine me with a dropper post? Such a revelation. But now I have killed enough of my backstock of 26-inch wheels that I don't have just sets of nice wheels hanging on the wall much anymore. And it's an 1.1/8 straight steer tube frame, and you basically can't get a quality fork with a straight steer tube anymore. So that's problematic. And the fork that I've got on there is old, and while it's been overhauled and all the rest, it's like if anything goes wrong with it, basically the entire bike is done, right? So I'm hanging on by a fork. And I've got basically no spare wheels. And again, it's also very difficult to buy quality 26-inch wheels. And even if you could, I'm not sure if I would, because anyway, ditto with tires, ditto with a whole bunch of other stuff. So, and I've been riding a ton. My riding frequency has only gone up. So it was time for a new bike entirely. And so, because I am not a person that makes giant leaps with bicycles, particularly in terms of technology, and because I'm me and because of a bunch of other reasons, I'm going with a steel hardtail mountain bike. I'm going with a custom-built frame. My deposit is in. I am on the wait list. I'm going to reserve who and what and where it is for the moment, but it will be an entirely custom steel mountain bike frame. Hardtail, as I said, 27-inch wheels with plus tire capability is right now the plan. And let me show you what goes into this. This will not be my first fully custom bike. I own several. I'm very lucky. But it's going to have been my first time in a really long time, and my first mountain bike that's like this. I've bought many frames and built them up, but I've never had a mountain bike frame built for me, right? So there's distinction. But let me show you sort of what I do. I keep and I don't know if you guys keep, I keep a binder labeled bike research around. And into my bike research binder, I put the geometry charts that I find with notes of any interesting and relevant bike that I see go by while I'm out looking at stuff. Up to and including that's my evil dimensions. Those are very, very hard to get. And I keep all of those, and I put notes on them about things that I like, things that concern me, things that I'm interested in, geometry-wise. That's the John Watson over at the Radavis did an open source geometry on one of his bikes, which I thought was very kind of him. And so I've got some annotations here about angles and lengths and all the rest. So anyway, so I start with that. I keep those around. And then the second thing I've got going is a page of notes about aspects of the bike that I have questions about or things that I'm going to do, and then a condensed chart of geometry. So things I could tell you, it will almost certainly be 157 by 12 on the back end. I'm thinking 400 millimeter minimum chainstays, and then with the dropouts that I'm using, I'll probably get those to go from 400 to 420 via their adjustment range. And yeah, it's not going to have a tapered head tube. It's going to have a straight head tube, but it's going to be oversized, so it'll do a tapered steer, obviously. And I'm looking at forks that are in the, I don't know, 140, 150 millimeter range, something like that. Currently, I'm leaning towards a Marzocchi Z2 because they're actually supposed to be really, really, really nice. I don't need all of the super fiddly adjustments of the top-end Fox stuff because I'm not that guy. And the pricing on it is like, how do you say no? I think it's like a $500 fork that is basically a very slightly beefier Fox 34, which is potentially an ideal fork for me for this trail bike. I've been running a 36 for the last bunch of years, and that's probably a bit much for the hardtail. But yeah, and current thinking for parts, just broadly speaking, because I know I've been talking forever. Broadly speaking for parts, currently I'm thinking about XT 12-speed micro spline, maybe. And over the years, I've had SRAM-equipped bikes, and I've had Shimano-equipped bikes, and I own a couple of Campy-equipped bikes. And I mostly haven't really cared between Shimano and SRAM. It's been very Coke and Pepsi, but the Shimano stuff I've had better luck with for long-term durability, and I definitely prefer Shimano disc brakes over SRAM disc brakes. So I'm looking at the Shimano 8120 brakes, which are the 4-pot XT disc brakes, 4-piston, or maybe going with a pair of Saint brakes on the bike. I don't know yet. Again, biggish guy, and we can get into this. You've seen, if you've been watching, you've seen the sort of riding that I do. So maybe it makes more sense to you then. Anyway, I'll talk more about this as we go. But I'm on the list. There's, I think, a listed 3.5 month wait time on the frame. So I've got a little bit of time to nail down numbers and all of the rest. But still, super duper exciting. And that means hopefully by the time fall comes or late summer comes, I will have, hopefully, a brand new modern mountain bike to ride on some trails. And that will be super duper fun. All right, thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time, and I'll see you out there.